how many years have you attended the Bughouse Square debates?
How many years have they been going on? Do you know? I don't know.
Well, the annual thing was commemorated, I think. The square was re-commemorated in 1996, but I'm not sure if that's when the annual...
That sounds about right to me. And I have not gone to each one. It was about 10 years ago. It seems right. They probably did it for 3 years. Studs and my mom said, hey, this is really fun. Why don't you come over? And that's what I probably did. So my guess is on and off for 10 years. I did something there a couple of years ago. I don't remember if I spoke or not. But it's a very relaxed, casual kind of thing. Have you been? It's very, very extraordinarily casual. You know, people wander from speaker to speaker, and there's nothing really formal. I think my job and Studs, as I saw Studs' job, was to just welcome people, say a few words about free speech. I'll say a few words about Studs, and I too will wander from person to person. If I'm bored, I'll move to the next one.
So, can you give one example of an interesting thing or person you've seen or heard at a previous?
No, I can't, and that's this is the reason I'm so eager to go there this year. I do not think, no one held my attention for more than about 5 minutes, which is a problem, because I am predisposed to be held. I want this thing to work. I don't know, a couple of years ago, a couple of people arguing about whether pets should be allowed in restaurants. No, this is not interesting to me. This is not provocative to me. I found nothing, and I'm sure there have been, but in my traveling from box to box, in the last 3 or 4 years, I have not found anything provocative enough for me.
Have you seen a person or a thing in another part of the city that you thought would fit well at the Bughouse Square debates?
Boy, that's an interesting question. I like going to churches and the storefront and otherwise, and I've seen dozens of storefront preachers who I think would be fantastic down there. Just fantastic. I'm fascinated with the whole notion of storefront churches that just sprout up in former, beauty parlors or whatever, and attract their crowds from all over the place. I have not. They used to have really interesting and sad people, spouting off on street corners here 20, 30 years ago. Many of them nuts, and many of them in need of some serious help, but many of them very interesting too. No, I think maybe, depending on who sees this, they will, and I'm going to make a point of it with the people. If again this year it is not, if this is just, if it's an empty echo, I don't give a shit about doing it again, and I don't think they should do it again. Unless you're going to really try to get people there and really remind them that free expression really means free expression. There should be people up there talking about cannibalism for all I care. But you can't, yes, it's a celebration of free expression, but we're going to pinch it here so it's kind of acceptable in case there are any kids there. If you got a kid there and you don't like what you're going to take the kid away. So this will be a turnaround for me. If indeed it isn't and they don't want to listen to me, then I may wander by the book fair sometime, but I probably would not be involved in this. I hate to be that sort of. I just think there's no point in doing it if you're going to do it in a kind of distilled fashion.
That leads into this question, which is there anything in today's Chicago that resembles the Bughouse Square debates at the height of their popularity in the middle of the 20th century?
No. There's some clubs doing interesting things, a lot of spoken word stuff, small clubs, especially small all-black clubs. There's interesting stuff being said on that stage at the Green Mill every Sunday night, too. There's very interesting stuff being said. If you ever go to Louder Than a Bomb, which is put on by my friend Kevin Coble, which is this teen poetry slam, that is about as interesting as anything going on in this town.
And where's that?
I think the finals were last week at the Chicago Theater. It's nationwide, but it goes on a smaller basis through young Chicago authors, where Kevin and some of these guys go into schools and tap these voices of these kids. when they have the louder than a bomb thing, you have kids from Highland Park High School next to kids from Englewood, man, and people from Rosemont next to people from all Geld Gardens. I mean, it's remarkable. And I think, and that's public, but it takes, the whole, where is this stuff going on now? It's going on somebody's blog. People are arguing, but it's just certainly not the same. Certainly not the same. There is no new, the Bughouse Square after the turn of the century into the 20s and 30s, there's nothing resembling that except some of these spoken word and poetry slam things where you're getting really tough and honest kind of self-expression.
I think you answered this question already, but it's worth touching back on, which is, do you think that the Bughouse Square debates take place online today, and how is it different?
I suppose in a sense they take place online, and in a sense, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe the fact that 4 people are sitting there listening to someone talk about how we need softer padding on chairs or whatever. That's probably the same audience that most people have on a blog, if that. A lot of blogs are just shouting in the wilderness. Nobody's listening. But also there's something to be said. I think it's interesting that part of that, and it's not true on a blog, part of what's going on at Bughouse Square is indeed performance art. You will be able to tell the difference between a good, persuasive speaker, body language. There's a lot entailed in that, in making your sales pitch work. And that I find fascinating. That's the fascinating thing about it. It's not just words on a screen.
What do you hope will happen at this year's Bughouse Square debates?
I hope that it would be very interesting if someone came in predisposed to think one way and heard a speaker persuasive enough on the other side of whatever that issue might be. Change your mind. I think there's a great joy in changing your mind. I think there are so many people, and that's why we have this kind of adversarial political landscape of red and blue, red and blue. I love it when someone will change their mind about an issue because I feel that they have, it's the definition of enlightenment, they have seen the light. And I'm not saying it could be someone who goes from being a very liberal person to a conservative person. There's a joy in that. A mind is not meant to be rigid. It is not meant to be more and more cement-like the older you get. The notion is that it should expand, and you should get. Changing one's mind is what someone should be doing every day about something. Whether you switch from orange juice to apple juice or from Democrat to Republican, it's a great joy, and that's what the mind's meant to do.
And the last thing to wrap up here would be, are there any other stories or thoughts you'd like to share about why the Bughouse Square debates are important to you?
Well, they're important to me because it's a lesson I want to learn from the studies. That I think that the most important thing in life is not to look through other people. I don't care if they're a waitress or a streetwise salesman or some lunatic screaming about there is no God on a street corner. If the Bughouse debates tell you anything, if you go there and you're aware of what's going on around you, is that everybody doesn't have to think like you. Imagine how fucked up this world would be if everybody did. It is a joy. It's not a problem. It's not an assault to hear from someone who thinks differently than you. As it's not an assault to be with someone who doesn't look like you or dress like you. This is what makes the world so rich and fascinating. And this is what I learned from studs. That everybody has a story to tell. Everybody has a story to tell. It may not be a front page story, but it's a worthwhile story, unless they're drunk and droning on. It's a worthwhile story to hear.